Welcome to Erskine Roundtable. My name is Grant Lawson. I am the creative production coordinator here at Erskine College. In my past life, a little while ago, I was a resident director here, and today we're sitting down with some current resident directors at Erskine, and I will let them introduce themselves. If you guys will just share your name and maybe what your resident director's over.
I'm Nolan Meadows, and I am over Bonner and Kennedy men's dorms, and I'm going into my second year working here at Erskine.
Yeah, and my name is Thomas Zentmeyer. I'm a first-year RD here, actually first semester, just finishing that up, and I'm over top of Greer and Presley dorms. So.
And maybe for those who aren't familiar with Erskine, what type of students do you oversee in those areas?
I oversee freshmen and upperclassmen. So in Bonner, the second and third floors are pretty much only freshmen, and the first floor is upperclassmen, and all of Kennedy is upperclassmen.
Yeah, and then for me, Presley is upperclassmen, and then Greer, where I live, is freshmen. So,
Gotcha.
Fun dorm.
For some context, you guys both know this, but I was formerly a resident director at Erskine, and so I've experienced this question quite a bit, and so I feel like everyone has their own way of answering it. But how would you all describe the job of a resident director?
Yeah, I think it's hard, like most jobs, to describe it very succinctly, but when I was thinking about this, I think primarily it's to interact with residents and help them grow and develop, and really be there as an advocate for them as they're going through college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what Thomas said, but I also think I would describe the job of a resident director as you're somebody who's there to help them. You're there to help students, to pour into them, to mentor them, to help see them grow, in some cases physically if they're an athlete or something like that, but in a lot of cases mentally, and especially here at a faith-based institution, spiritually as well.
Yeah, and I know it can be a demanding job, working with college students, and I know you both had different paths to getting here, but I don't know all about it. So what led you to the role of resident director in general, and then maybe what led you here to Erskine specifically?
For me, I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and originally I went there hoping to be a youth pastor, probably eventually going up the chain to head pastor, but start small, right? And I remember, I think I was in my junior year when I realized, all right, preaching, I can do it, but it's really not something that gets me excited, at least in the same way as I think it does other people. And so I kind of pivoted. I talked with my RD at the time a lot and asked him, what are some jobs where I can minister to students, help them grow and develop as individuals and in their relationship with God, but I don't have to preach weekly. And so we talked about it a lot, eventually landed on, hey, resident director would be a great fit. It's a lot of interacting with students and kind of that same thing, like helping them grow.
Yeah.
And so, and then I heard about Erskine through one of my fellow RAs at the time, Morgan Roberts, and she was here a year before me and told me about the position here. So
That's awesome. It's cool to hear. I feel like a lot of things you talked about, and both of you focused on, but advocating for students, and especially at a Christian school, which we both brought up, where we work, is that ministry aspect and doing ministry in a different way is interesting to me, that path. Nolan, how about you?
Well, I did residence life. I graduated from Mississippi College, and so I did residence life for 3 years while I was there. I was a regular RA, and then I was a lead RA. I've been told that at some other schools that can be equated to an assistant RD, and so I did that for a couple of years. And for me, a lot of it came from I had kind of thought for a while, I was like, man, I really enjoy this. I think this is something that I would love to do long term as a career, that kind of stuff. And then somewhere along the way, probably around the time that COVID hit, because I was still an undergrad student at that time, I had completely talked myself out of it and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And then thankfully one of my bosses, who I know you've both heard me mention a couple times, Isaac Barber, he had reached out to me and sent me a couple of applications and that kind of stuff, and we talked, and he helped me kind of just get prepared to do some RD interviews, because at that point I was like, might as well. I'm not losing anything to apply. And I came back to it, and truly, like, since doing it, I've realized, like, I definitely still love doing the job, love being able to work with college students. Yes, they can sometimes be a lot, but at the end of the day, like, for the most part, I think it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you both used two words that stuck out to me, which was advocating for students, and being able to see students grow. And so I think that probably plays into kind of what I'd like to hear from you next is what do you find most rewarding about your job doing that, Nolan? I would assume it relates to seeing students grow, but maybe not.
Yeah, so most rewarding for me, one of the things I have my RAs do, and I think Thomas might have his RAs do this as well, is I have my RAs pick out 3 goals at the start of a semester, and one is a personal goal, one is an academic goal, and one is a spiritual goal. And sometimes the spiritual goals are something that's seemingly simple, but sometimes it's easier said than done, of just picking up your Bible and reading it twice a week. You know, sometimes it's something that seems like it's that simple. Other times, it's like I had one RA, Ira, who one of his personal goals was to start pitching at 90 miles an hour again. And he texted me over the summer and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I finally accomplished this goal." Even another one of my current RAs, Dante, who you know very well. Even with Dante, he texted me the other day because 2 of his goals were that he could start. He's a center for the football team, so that he could start all season, and that he would pull a 4.0 for this semester. And he texted me the other day and sends me a text and goes, "Starting all season? Check. 4.0 GPA? Check.
That's impressive.
Done." And I was like that's, to me, that's really rewarding, because it means that I've gotten to see them say, this is what I want to do. I need to achieve it. And we get to have those conversations as we go on about what that looks like.
Yeah. About like the practical steps. If that makes sense.
How to put it into practice. That's always one of the things I ask them when they tell me the goals is like, okay, we hear your goal now. What are you going to do to accomplish it? And that's always the question I get to ask them after they tell me. And then we get to start talking through kind of action plans and that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. Thomas, what about you? What do you find most rewarding?
I think for me, being able to have those faith conversations with students is really like what gets me excited about the job. I don't have them a ton, but when I do, like those few moments where I'm able to, are really rewarding. I had a conversation with someone who was very excited to be an RA this coming year. And so we sat down, we talked about the job and kind of what that looks like. But obviously at Erskine, and we'll probably talk about this later, but at Erskine, like we want our RAs to be believers. So that way they can lead the floor accordingly and in a manner that, you know, we all kind of agree upon.
Yeah.
And so I talked with him, and he was honest with me. I asked him, like, all right, where's your faith at right now? And we were able to talk through that, and really I was able to encourage him, like, okay, like over this Christmas break, over the next semester, like really focus on that. Like you don't have to become the best Christian like ever or anything like that, but use this time to like develop yourself and grow. So that way, like when we come to interviews and things like that, we're able to see that growth and that desire for a relationship with Christ. And that's something that got me really excited to like see him being like, okay, like, yeah, I need to start like taking this a little more seriously than what I have been in the past. So
that's interesting. And I mean, it makes total sense to me that both of your answers kind of relate to like personal growth in students in very different ways. And we're definitely going to come back to that. I want to come back around to not only kind of what that looks like, but also what that looks like for you all with the students in your hall and the students you work more closely with as RAs. But I want to pivot here because it relates. And this might be a hard question. I don't know. But living with students, you know, you both live in residence halls and in residence with them. I'm sure you see a lot of that positive growth, and I know you both talk about having hard times as well and walking with students through those. But I know you probably both have observed some humorous, some funny things or maybe even just most enjoyable times through that as well. So what are, if you can share them, what are some of the funniest moments you've experienced as an RD so far?
Do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I can go.
Thomas was ready with that one.
Give you some time to think.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, there was a day where us 4 RDs were sitting up in our office, and we had the window open just a little bit to let some of the cool air in, and we hear like, not like disturbing yelling or anything outside, but people like kind of getting excited or whatever. And so we all like look out the window, and one of our residents, he's never learned to ride a bike before. He's 20 or 21 or so, and so he's like riding down the mall, trying to keep his balance on the bike, and just eats it into one of these trees. And we're all up in the office. Like,
he ran into a tree?
he ran into a tree.
Oh yeah.
And so we're dying laughing.
No.
We're yelling out the window like, "Yeah, Andrew, like you can do it." So that was a really just funny time for me to watch him.
Well,
like,
did he stick with it?
he kept going. He's riding his bike now.
Oh, look at that.
Rides it all over campus.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Growth, right? It's all related.
It is.
Part of that physical growth, yeah.
Now he can ride a bike before he. I feel like that should go on your resume somewhere.
Taught
You were
residents to
really.
ride a
You
bike.
can claim it. I mean, I guess you guys were in your office, but maybe you can claim that as you taught him. I don't know.
We'll be like,
You encouraged
we
him.
We
encourage him, yeah.
Encourage the students.
Yeah, encourages students to learn new things. That's what we can put.
That's trying new things. Nolan, do you have a story now?
Yeah, no, I think I've got just it all kind of folds into one. So, as you are both aware, but not anybody who's watching or listening or anything like that is aware, I have a random just tire from a car that I just keep in my room, in my apartment, and right there in Bonner. And so I got it for free because a student was just going to get rid of it, and I don't know, it was nostalgic for me because I had a roommate who we used a big tire that he had as a coffee table. So it's nostalgic for me to have
Nolan
it.
didn't have a pet rock growing up.
No, I did not have a pet rock growing up. And so I keep the tire in there. And one of my favorite things is residents just walk into my apartment and they'll start looking around. And after they get over the fact that my apartment, where I live year round, is bigger than their regular sized dorm room, after they get over that, they stop and then they go, "Is that a tire?" And I go, "Mm-hmm." And they're like, why do you have that? And I go, "Talking point." And they all go for it. And now that tire will randomly like people use it as seats. One of my RAs uses it in our staff meetings. He just sits down and he just kind of sits there and bounces on the tire while we're talking through stuff.
It's like a yoga ball.
Yeah, exactly. He treats it exactly like a yoga ball. I had a resident try to see if they could fit in the tire at one point and roll down a hill. They could not fit in the tire,
That's about right.
which might be a good thing.
Yeah. It's a normal tire, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's a normal car tire. Well, there's not that much tread on it, but
That would make sense. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that a college student would fit into a tire.
there was one that we met. We're pretty sure that she could have fit into it if she was like 5 inches shorter.
There you go.
But she
I
wasn't
doubt she
5
wanted to
inches
ride down a hill.
shorter. Nah, she shot down the opportunity. You know, it was worth it though.
I like the talking points. Do you know where the student got this tire?
Yeah, I got it from the student. I saw her, and I was riding with another one of our fellow RDs, Morgan. I was riding with her back over to, we live on the Circle on campus. And so I was riding with her back over to Robinson, and I just saw one of her residents rolling it down the hill to the dumpsters at the end of the year. And I was like, I should really ask her if I can have that tire. And Morgan was like, do you actually want the tire? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. And she just rolled down the window and was like, hey, Nolan wants your tire. And the resident looked at me like I was crazy. Like, she had her boyfriend rolling it down, and they both stopped, and they were like, do you actually want this tire? Like, you can't put it on a car or anything. I said, oh, I know. I'm just going to take the tire, though. You don't want it. And they were like, you can have it. And so I took it, and there I go, just rolling it down the hill.
So what I'm hearing is you're like the Little Mermaid of campus. You just have your collection of odds and ends. And
Yes.
if anyone's got something interesting, you want to.
Pretty much. That's how I got a portable ice maker.
See, I feel like we could just spend the rest of this. I will not let us go down that path. Maybe we need to have another episode just focused on Nolan's collections. Do a cribs.
I have all sorts of random stuff. It's very fun. You know, somebody will use it at some point.
Okay, I will pull that thread. Somebody will use it.
Somebody will use it at some point. I had some aluminum foil pans that Morgan just got to use while she was cooking dinner for the women's basketball
Somebody will.
team. Like,
We will be in prayer that somebody uses your tire. for good use someday. Oh, man.
I'll make it like a Christmas tree.
That's amazing. Thank you guys for that. Man, I really want to keep pulling on that string, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna resist the urge, or else we'd be here all day, I feel like. I want to kind of pivot and you both hit on this, and Thomas especially, as you went in depth on some of your background and how you got here, and I know it plays into a lot of what you do here and what you like about your role, Nolan, but obviously we're here at Erskine College, which is a Christian school. Here specifically, how do you all find that the values that Erskine holds as a Christian school, how does that impact residence life uniquely here?
I think I would say, because I know a couple of other people who have worked in residence life at public schools and things like that, and I've kind of talked to them about what it looks like for them. And for them, a lot of times what I have heard kind of as a general consensus is, I can share my faith, but I have to be choosy about it. And so for me, working here and at a Christian school, because truly, we're a missional school, so not every student who's here is a Christian. So there's still those conversations that can be had, and I don't have to worry about having to be choosy about how I say it. I can be honest with students, and I can have those very real conversations with them. I had one student who I looked at last year even, and said, what does your church life look like? Are you going to church anywhere? What is happening there? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, no, I'm not. And truthfully, things have just not been easy. And I said, well, just here to tell you, man, start going to church again. You find the right church, they're going to be the people that are going to support you. They're going to be the people that are going to want to pray for you. They're going to want to do everything they can to help you, along with us here. Because you have us here. You have me here. You have your RAs here. We're here to help you. I said, and I even told him, I want to pray for you before you leave. Before you leave this office, I want to make sure that we can pray. That's something that, I feel like I would have to be significantly more selective about if I was not at a Christian school. So that is something for me that I feel like impacts our residence life a lot, is we're able to share our faith more freely.
That's awesome. Thomas, if you have more to add to that, that's totally cool. But I would be interested too, just to kind of, and this maybe is jumping ahead a little bit as well. But the values, like Nolan talked about, they affect residence life as a whole here. But I know you've talked already about this a little bit. But how does your personal faith here at Erskine? I'm going to rephrase that. Thomas, how does your faith impact how you are an RD here?
Yeah, that's. I think it impacts just about every aspect of how I'm interacting with students, why I'm interacting with students. If I didn't have faith, I think there would be a lot of circumstances where I'm just kind of letting students do their own thing. I'm not really here for them. But I think having faith transforms that into, okay, how can I show Christ's love to the students that I'm working with? There's a lot of students that will drive you crazy in residence life. And that's just a part of the job. You kind of know what you're signing up for when you apply. But I think with faith, there's ability to look past the actions of the person and say, okay, this is a being created in God's image. How can I help them grow and develop? And I think that looks like me being involved in their lives, not just ignoring them, not just putting them off to the side, but really sitting down with them and getting to know them on a personal level, and making sure that their needs are met, and showing them grace where grace can be afforded. That's been given to us, and so we too can extend that.
I completely agreed with him saying that my personal faith impacts every aspect of my life and how we go about doing this job. because again, you get to talk about like getting to see the situation that students are in and that kind of stuff, and then getting to go, okay, what's going to actually be the best way to help this relationship be there? Because like there's got to be accountability, right? Like you can't just do something dumb and then just get away with it, scot-free. Like that's not how it's supposed to work. Because realistically, like when you're showing people love, you're also showing them accountability. And so that like sometimes the accountability comes in the form of a conversation. Sometimes it comes in the form of a fine. But like at the end of the day, that is something that like I would say our faith heavily impacts. Even like had some residents who earlier this semester, they did something dumb. They got in trouble for it. And they like came by my apartment later because we talked and they said, hey, we really messed up. Like, we're sorry. We shouldn't have done that. And so that got to be a conversation that got to open up because I was able to look at them and go, all right, well, you can't get out of it all. You're still going to get in some trouble. But the fact that you're willingly like telling me, hey, this is what happened and we're really sorry about it, like keep that same attitude when you go into some of those disciplinary hearings and that kind of stuff to say like, we messed up, it's not going to happen again. And I've gotten to watch those guys just get to grow tremendously as the semester has gone on. Like now exactly. Like now they're consistently going to church at our local ARP church here, Jorp. They've been consistently going there for I think several months now. And they've been asking their RAs questions about like, how can I grow in my faith and that kind of stuff. Like they see me and they always make it a point to say like, hey, how are you? Like they'll ask me about my breaks. I get to talk to them. And then they just, it was a way for me to build a relationship off of a conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, yep.
Well, and I imagine too that the size, being at a smaller Christian school, impacts that as well with you all. Like you have less students under your care, and so you're able to have more of those personal conversations with them and kind of have that one-on-one interaction with more than you would if we were at a much larger school.
Right.
Which is unique. Speaking of that as well, how do you guys go about creating a sense of community and belonging among the residents in your halls? How do you do that with a bunch of different people coming from all over the place? That's a big one.
Do you have an answer in mind, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think honestly, that's not, in my opinion, that's not as much our job as it is our RAs. I think they are the ones who truly are living beside the residents. They're peer leaders, right? And so there's an aspect of like they're in the same role. They're students, they're learning, they're athletes, different things like that.
Yeah.
And I think really they are the ones that have the most ability to create that impact. For us, though, that means that we need to be leading them and mentoring them well.
Right.
And so we do a lot of training and different things like that with them to help them really become the leaders that we want to see on our campus. So that way they can be the ones that are really helping to create that community and like belonging with each resident. And for a lot of them, that's something that they've never done before. And so there's a lot of like helping them do that well. That happens with our job.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where my mind was starting to go, was that I feel in terms of that community and belonging among residents, that is something that our RAs probably do more than us. Like, yes, we talk to residents, but our RAs are the ones that are living on the hall with them. And in the case of, well, actually in every RA's case, never mind, they're sharing bathrooms with them. I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're sharing all the living spaces with them. They're in classes with them. They see them every single day. Because, again, talk about it's a small campus. It's hard to not see some people. Yeah, so that's the thing. I think I would definitely agree with you, Thomas, that, like, our RAs probably do that. Like, that's probably something they do even more than us. But a lot of times, too, like you also said, it requires us to be good leaders. One of my phrases that I've always said is that trickle-down economics might not work, but trickle-down leadership does. because the type of leader you are and how you lead your RAs, because I mean, part of what we're doing as RDs, we're doing one-on-ones with our RAs every single week. We are sitting down and meeting with them on an individual basis, talking about their lives, talking about what's going on, like how can we help you, like as a person. And so that's something that we're talking about. And so if we are pouring into them the way that like we need to be, then they are going to start reflecting that. They're going to start reflecting, building that community. If we are friendly with them, we are always talking with them, showing that we care, then they are going to start showing that to the residents. That will be something that will come out. It might take time. It does take time for some RAs, but it does come out and it does show. So definitely the way we lead our RAs is how the RAs build community and belonging among residents. It reflects that, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like all of us are making a pitch to potential college students or college students to be RAs. That's what we're doing. Yeah. Whether you're here or not.
Never
Be
hurts.
an RA. Doesn't hurt. We all were RAs.
Right.
So.
I mean, I think it creates like a great opportunity for building self-leadership and like you can put that on a resume and things like that, and that looks good. And so
definitely.
I mean, like definitely, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is too, like on top of just the resume, like truly, you get a built-in mentor. Like not everybody gets that, and I didn't understand the value of having a mentor until I became an RA. Like that was when it truly clicked for me. Like, oh, this is something that's a really important part of my life that I need to have it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get that built in.
Yeah.
So
makes total sense.
yeah, and it's not like and like we won't lie, it's not the easiest job in the world all the time.
Yeah.
It just isn't. But no job is.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's, in my experience, it's worth it.
Yeah. That's awesome, guys. I appreciate that. I feel like I could sit here and talk for another 30 minutes about these concepts, but I want to transition some and kind of pivot to someone who may be a potential student or someone who's looking at coming to college in general. Some questions for you all, because you guys have not only been college students yourself, you've helped college students as RAs, and now you work with RAs and college students. And so, I think there are a lot of people there are a lot of places people go to try to find this information, and some of it, maybe it just depends on where you're going, but some of it you can only get from learned experience. So I'd love to hear from you all. What do you think students learn, or maybe what they gain from living on campus somewhere, as opposed to off campus, obviously?
My experience has been that students who tend to say commute, unless they are already an extremely social student, and realistically, if commuting is the thing that's going to be more affordable for you, understandable. But if you are commuting or you are living on campus, I encourage you to get involved, do things. It's a lot. My experience has been that it's a lot easier for students living on campus to get involved in campus community, because they're the ones that are here. They see when we have our on-campus events. We had a lip sync battle right here on this very stage a few weeks ago, and we had students show up, and the majority of those students are ones who are going to live on campus. So they get the opportunity to be a part of that campus community and and it's a good chance to meet new people. And so that's what I would say is a really great opportunity that you could gain from living on campus. That and also, you just get to know people like me and Thomas and, RAs and everything. So, I feel like there's a perk there.
Yeah, you don't get to live with Nolan or Thomas in the same building as them if you don't live on campus.
Right, exactly. You don't even have a chance then.
You don't even have a chance. Yeah.
Now we just got to hope we see you in the
don't make
cafeteria or something. Yeah.
In the pizza line, right?
Right, in the pizza line.
Soft serve ice cream line.
Right,
You might pass Nolan, but
you
could live down the hall from him.
making an ice cream cone about that tall,
That is true. I have seen that. That is an accurate thing. I think that's a good point. Being on campus is kind of, unless you're incredibly social and really making effort to do that, it's harder to get involved. What do you guys think when somebody is living on campus? How do they practically, and this may be hard because it's sometimes I feel like hard to put yourself back into college students' mind. Maybe a little easier since you guys live with freshman college students, but what are some ways that students, and maybe practical, simple ways, they go about building community on campus and really getting involved in campus life?
I mean, I think at a certain point, there's only so much that we can do and RAs can do to encourage students to get involved. Like, at the end of the day, they are the ones that need to go to these events or gatherings or things like that and just show up. I remember probably my first week at college, especially in high school, I was not a very outgoing person. And so making friends at college was something that I worried about going in. That first week, I just made it a point, like, okay, anything that my RA sets up, anything that, like, any event that I can go to, like, I'm going to go to it. I don't necessarily need to be the person that's starting all the conversations, but, like, it was through those events and gatherings and things like that that I was able to just meet people. And a lot of times there were other people who were just kind of awkwardly standing in the corner waiting for somebody to talk to them, and we would just connect a little bit, and then we'd see each other outside of those events and say, like, oh, hey, like, what's up, Andrew, or, whatever. But it's really, I think, just about putting yourself out there. It can be a little bit scary sometimes to go to an event and you don't know anybody there. But especially at college, us professional staff are thinking about, okay, there's students who are coming in with no prior relationships. How can we get them involved? And so I would say 95% of colleges are thinking about that and saying, like, hey, like, we want every student to feel like they have a sense of belonging, have a community here. And so, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, like, it's really, at the end of the day, they need to get out of their rooms and just show up to something,
Well, and sometimes it doesn't even take completely, like, I do agree, like, it doesn't, like, they do just, sometimes you just need to get out of your room. Sometimes it doesn't even take getting out of your room, though. Sometimes it just takes being willing to talk to people. Like, it is very hard unless you are somebody who's a patient person. So, like, I've been the person in the past who has found the guys who I would talk to, and my back would hurt from carrying the conversation. Because literally I would be talking to them, and I think you've both heard this before. My freshman roommate, great guy. When we first started out, though, it was rough. Like, the extent of his answers to me for the first half of our fall semester was and interesting. I counted all those on my hand. And that would be after I would rattle off a whole paragraph to him. And it took time to build that relationship. And, like, but most people aren't going to be necessarily that patient. For me, I was living with him. I was living with him, and I also understood the value of prayer too. So, like, I was praying over that relationship a lot as we were going through it. And we got better, like, to the point that, like, I mean, I still miss him to this day. As he truly, like, he was a good guy. He just took a while to warm up. And so, like, sometimes, like, like, you need to just be willing to talk to people. I knew residents last year who I really didn't see them outside of their room hardly at all. So if I encountered them, it was because I was doing, like, say, our health and safety checks or something like that. And so they were in there. So I would talk to them then. But I didn't really see them much outside the room, maybe if they were going to a class. But come to find out, like, they had great community because they talked with other guys on the floor. And so them and the other guys would just all hop on PlayStation and play, like, Madden or, like, The Show or something like that, just on their PlayStations. And they would just all talk to each other through headsets. And so they'd just be talking. They had community. They just didn't go out of their room, but they talked to people. So sometimes it takes having a willingness to talk to people. But I do agree that I believe that the best way to do it is going to be to get out of your room, go to the events that your RAs put on. I was one of those kids who went to college and had zero connections. I knew nobody. Actually, in the suite style dorm that I lived in, the 3 guys that I was living with all knew each other because they went to high school together. Like,
you were that guy.
Yeah, exactly. I was that guy. I was the guy who got in there because they didn't have a 4th person. Like, so, I mean, that's the thing, is I made that decision too, like you said, like, I'm going to go to anything and everything that, like, Res Life puts on, Campus Life puts on, because I just want to meet people. That's how I met a buddy of mine who, he's now been married for almost a year, but that's how I met him and we thought we weren't going to see each other anymore. He was a nursing major. I was public relations. We were like, we will never talk again. And then we just kept on talking because we kept bumping into each other. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being being the best man at his wedding last December.
Yeah,
like, it took being willing to talk to people and being willing to get out.
Yeah. Well, I feel like what I get some from both of you, if I had to summate it in my own way, and I think it's easier to say this now, obviously, but I think it's still true from our experiences. You have to embrace the awkward. Mm-hmm. You have to embrace the awkward and understand that probably everybody else feels the same way.
Yep.
There might be that one kid like Nolan who doesn't. I'm just kidding. There might be that one kid who doesn't feel that way, but you know, you're kind of all in the same boat. And I mean, like I said, I'm sure we all experience this as we talk to students now. It's hindsight's 2020, right? But
Right.
I feel like I agree with you. That's some of my advice. Maybe even to me now. Sometimes I'm still the guy in the corner in a social setting.
Yeah.
You know, we have all these big staff gatherings, and I'll go look for you guys and stand off to the side and eat snacks. But you know, it's still that shared experience really brings people together. Or even just opening your door while you're playing a video game, maybe instead of just playing there by yourself.
I don't even have to be playing video games sometimes. I'll just leave my door hanging open. I had 3 guys walk in.
People just walk in there.
There was an RA making waffles in my apartment, and 3 dudes just walked in and started talking to me about it. And I was like, okay.
I feel like we skipped over the RAs making waffles part.
Yes.
But I guess it's self-explanatory. Yeah.
Well, one of my RAs is engaged now, and his fiance, who is also an RA, she wanted to make waffles, but she wanted to wear her ring while she was making them. But she didn't want other people to know, so she came by my apartment and cooked waffles.
So there's nothing to do. If you open your door, people will make waffles,
Right.
waffles in your room,
Right.
and then they'll come in and talk about it. There you go. Maybe rapid fire, not rapid fire, but you know, if you guys could cover quickly things that come to mind, maybe it's like the do's and don'ts of college life or dorm life specifically. You guys both live in residence halls. You see the pitfalls. I'm sure there are some obvious ones, but what are the things you recommend that people may or may not think about they should or should not do, or should or should not bring to their college dorm rooms with them that they might forget about?
I mean, I think one thing that was big for me my first semester was, like, I didn't get a job, didn't do anything else except for focus on classes, and then, like, building a community on my floor.
Yeah.
But that just really helped me, like, figure out how college works, and that allowed me then in subsequent semesters to get a job, to, you know, be off campus more and spend that time more freely, because I had already figured out, like, okay, like, this is how much about or approximate time I need to spend, like, studying each week and things like that. So that was a really big help for me.
Yeah, definitely do get like a planner or a calendar or something like that. I used, because I tried a planner. I'm just not much of a writing kind of guy like that. But Google Calendar, amazing.
Yep.
I used to say I had digital Skittles because I would color code everything. And yeah, I put all my classes into my Google Calendar, any RA things I had going on, like, and which that was another thing where, like, my RD was very helpful because he looked at us and said, I expect y'all to be more organized than a regular student. Like, that was one of his expectations. He literally made us all buy a planner and bring it. He was the only reason I touched a planner. But that did emphasize to me the need to get organized, get my crap together. Yeah, I definitely think that one.
I mean, on the flip side too, there's some students who are like, hey, I need to spend all week long in the library. Like, also get out of the library, like,
Right.
go make friends.
Yeah.
Right, you can put social time into that schedule.
Yeah.
You can plan it out.
Right. Which, I mean, that's part of the great college triangle, though, is social life, academic life, and sleep. So
It's a classic.
right.
Main three.
Sometimes it turns into a square. Like here at Erskine, we have a lot of student athletes, so it's more of a square. Because you have to involve my sport. So you're trying to work with the four corners there.
Just as long as you don't get to a hexagon or anything, that's too much. Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem.
Contact Nolan if you figured out the hexagon. No,
please let me know.
No, that's interesting. I feel like a lot of it plays into one another of both you guys' work advocating for and seeing students grow over 4 years, but also I feel like what I get from the advice you've given is a big part of it is figure out where you want to be and how to do college, but also part of that is just getting out, like opening your door, finding community there,
right?
Maybe finding the community that is outside your door, right?
Right.
Maybe when you're a college student, it's easy to shut your door and see, but I know you two walk out of your doors every day and enter a community of college students.
Well, and I think it's important to note too. This is something I would say, don't overcommit. And so I think it's important to note here, because we've talked about it a few times, of like, go get involved in campus community. Getting involved does not necessarily mean making a big commitment. I think that some students don't understand that. They think, oh, the only way I'm going to get involved is if I like join these 5 clubs. You do not have to join 5 clubs to be involved in campus community.
Yep.
I joined a club, one singular club in college, and once I started my RA job, I said, I love this club, but I'm just going to focus on the RA job. And that was what I did, and I still felt very involved in campus community, only doing those couple things. So, like, you don't have to commit to a billion things to be involved in campus community. Sometimes it's just being the person who's there.
This makes me want to ask, and I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't prepare you guys with this question. So you can, maybe I'll allow just minutes of silence here where you figure it out. But if you could summate, what you think is the advice that you would give yourself when you were going back into college, and maybe you would give to someone who might be like yourself as they go into college, what would that piece of advice be? Something short and sweet as possible, as they're entering their college experience.
Probably something along the lines of, it's okay to make mistakes. Like, college is a time to learn, and so don't worry too much about the details, but also like have a good plan going in and be flexible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I know what I want to say. I'm trying to think of how I want to word it, though.
Well, I can tell you, I thought of one for myself.
Well,
That's why I
what's
asked
one
the
for
question.
yourself?
I think for me, it would have been someone who little Grant who's about to enter college. I would say, don't take the opportunities you have for granted. I think we talked about that some, but as 3 people who still work at a college but are no longer college age, I think it's, once you leave college, it's all the clearer the unique opportunity there is there when you're with a bunch of people who are your age, and a bunch of opportunities and people like you all, resident directors, and people working campus life, and a lot of areas really trying to cater events to you. I would say don't take for granted the opportunities and the people who are around you. I feel like I took for granted the diversity of people and the backgrounds and personalities that were around me at times, and so I think that would be what I would say too.
That reminds me, I had wanted to talk about that, but
yeah, you're good.
We never got to it.
Yeah,
such I forgot. But
fine.
just like, the fact that most people, I think, are coming from, like, when I grew up, I was in mostly white communities with evangelicals. Like, I knew the people in my church and maybe the people in my sport. But in reality, like, a lot of us were very like-minded people. Coming to college, possibly the only thing that you have in connection with them is they also wanted to go to this college. And so that's a fantastic opportunity to get to know people that you normally couldn't in the communities that you've been a part of growing up. Like you said, like, don't miss those opportunities, because that really helped me grow in college as a person, and how I interact with people is like, okay, like, I'm going to take a moment and like interact with these students who I don't normally have an opportunity to know, and it expanded my understanding of who people are and the differences that can be there, and that was very beneficial for me.
Yeah, you both have said a lot of what I wanted to say in different formats.
Nolan says ditto.
Because because like talking about opportunities and that kind of stuff. Same thing happened to me in high school. I was not at all involved in high school with anything, not until my senior year, because I did nothing. I went to school and went home. That was it. Maybe go over to a buddy's house on the weekend. Nothing else. Would go to some football games, that kind of stuff. Nothing big. And then in college, I got to college and I did a lot of stuff, but I didn't do a lot of stuff. if that makes sense. I don't think I really and truly took advantage of the opportunities I had there. Because even when I graduated, I was talking to my admissions counselor, who was like a really big reason why I even ended up like going to MC and everything. And so I'm talking with him after graduation. He goes, yeah, you were in residence life, right? And I was like, yeah, for 3 years. And he goes, man, that's such a ministry. And I knew that it was, but for some reason, I don't know if I had just never heard somebody say it, but it never registered in my mind like, that is truly a ministry. And I think and wish that I would have taken more advantage of that position I was in. Like, I knew I could have those conversations, and I did have those conversations. But I think had it fully registered with me even more at that time, like, this is a ministry, then I would probably tell myself to take advantage of that and have those opportunities. Because, I mean, we're talking about, like my sophomore year, my first year as an RA, I had an international student who did not speak very good English. I had 8 of them that year, and they looked at me, and at first, all I got was a head nod. So they acknowledged my existence. That was nice. They acknowledged my existence, and then eventually I got, what's up, Mr. RA? And they knew me as Mr. RA. I have a name tag sitting on my door. Just putting that out there. I had a name tag sitting on my door. They all met me at our hall meeting.
Yep.
But I was Mr. RA. And then eventually I became Nolan. And I had one guy one night, he goofed up. He completely broke a scanner outside, one of our fob scanners outside the building. And he comes by my door and goes, hey Nolan, can I talk to you for a minute? We had never, I had tried to have conversations with you guys, and we really didn't get far. And he comes by and goes, can I talk to you for a minute? I was like, yeah, what's up? And he goes, I messed up the other night, and I kind of broke the fob scanner that was outside the building, and I felt like I should let you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And I wish I could have used it in that moment. I wish I would have registered what was going on and would have done more than just go, oh, he trusts me enough to tell me this now, and would have let that turn into a conversation. So I think that's what I would tell myself, is to take advantage of those ministry opportunities that are there. And of course, now that I recognize that, I do that far more in my RD role than I feel like I did. I have had other past residents who have said differently, but I do not feel like I truly took advantage of it when I was an RA. So that's what I would think I would tell myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yep.
Guys, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come chat with me. I feel like we could probably talk even longer. I'm sure we've talked plenty long enough. But I really do appreciate that and the insights you've given, and I'm sure they'll be helpful to some of the people who watch. For those of you who are watching, thank you for joining us on this episode of Erskine Roundtable. If you want to learn more about Erskine, you can find more about us at our website, which is at erskine.edu, and I'm sure we'll be down in the description as well. And thanks again, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us on.